Community correspondent for the town of Oxford, Mr. And he is indeed a Mr. Mark Rushton. Good morning, sir.
You remember the old days when people actually took their title seriously?
Are you trying to tell me something?
Oh, no. My ego is not even close to the point where I say, call me doctor.
Yeah, exactly. The funny thing is, you are a doctor. I don't mean a medical doctor, but you have your doctorate. And
I was going to say, not the kind of doctor that helps people, no.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, it's a good point you raise. I, out of respect, we might call you Dr. Rushton. That would be respectful. But we also recognize that you are a university employee, would have a certain title with that job. You are a husband. You are a dad. You are a community leader. And, of course, you are the community correspondent. Oh, and you're a publisher and editor of Hello Oxford. And, of course, you're our community correspondent. So, the problem isn't that there's a title and we're not using it or respecting it. The problem is you have too many.
I think in the old days they simply called someone like me folks who like to stick their nose in too many other people's businesses. So, hey, Bill, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you very much. I always look forward to talking with you because, A, we get some serious news coverage out of Town Council in Oxford from last night, and B, because we always have a laugh. We always enjoy the conversation, and every time I think of that, I think, why can't we have somebody from Tidnish and somebody from Parsborough and somebody from Two Island, all over the place, and just fill this conversation with things going on throughout the county. Wouldn't that be neat?
It would be lovely. I think at this point, folks are starting to move into cottage mode, so fewer people are available to talk to us.
Well, except for the fact that a whole whack of people are moving into their cottage from afar, so we get a lot more people to talk to. People have often said to me, what's the population of Pugwash? And I say, well, it depends. And they say, on what? I say, well, it's about 680, I think, in the wintertime, and 6,000 in the summertime.
Yes, that reminds me of my years living in Halifax, going to university, and as a city with a number of universities within its boundaries, the nature of the city changed radically every September when the students showed up.
The invasion.
Indeed. Well, where should we start today, Bill? It's
Town Council.
Town Council. Town Council, it was a light agenda last night, the last regular council meeting before their summer break. Staff and councillors, of course, will still be pulled together for the occasional meeting and the occasional special meeting as needs arise, but this was the last scheduled meeting. It kicked off last evening with a short presentation to two young people from Oxford who did something very nice, and they deserved recognition for doing that. Mayor Henley identified these two young people, Emily McCullough and Riker Brown, as folks who helped out after a small act of vandalism at the town hall. Somebody last couple of weeks ago took the pride flag off of the side of the building. It's just it's not secured. It's just placed into a holder, as all the flags are. And this person with, shall we say, a little bit of hate in the heart, decided it was best to toss that into the river.
Well, just to interrupt you there. Yeah. Yesterday we talked to the mayor about that, and he actually called it a hate crime.
And by the definitions, yes, you would call it a hate crime. It targets a particular vulnerable community in Canadian society, and under the law, it would qualify as a hate crime. As far as we know, they still haven't identified the suspect, despite having captured them on the security cameras. So that investigation, to the best of our knowledge, is ongoing. But we're going to focus on the positive and say, these two kids saw the flag and realized that it wasn't the place for it, brought it back to Town Hall, and, they were duly recognized last night for being good community citizens.
He actually climbed out into the river, but not much water there, not a hard wade, but nonetheless walking out into the river to pick up the flag.
Well, for those of us who grew up in Oxford, spent much of our teen years underneath that bridge, and not necessarily doing anything nefarious, but that's the place where a lot of us teenagers went to do fishing of Gaspereau and other sea life that used to run through that river. There was a run of Gaspereau last week. In fact, I posted a photo which to our local Oxford news pages on social media, and folks were waxing nostalgic about the days gone by when they could literally walk across the river on top of the backs of the fish. Oh dear, it's nice to look back. It's rose-colored glasses, you know.
That's the ultimate fish story, by the way. Walking on their backs. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Apart from that, last night, well, let's just say the scheduled items on the agenda were fairly light. We had a quick note. The province was asking for the town to update them on the list of current fire inspectors and building inspectors, and that's a minor thing the staff is taking care of. And the one thing that arose last night out of the personal experiences of one of our councillors, Padraig Moore, he's our new councillor from the last election. He and his family experienced a very unpleasant situation. This is public knowledge, so we're not revealing any confidences here, where they had a bit of a threat to their family, to their children, from someone that they knew. It went on for a few days. The community rallied to their defense, and the situation appears, for the moment, to be resolved with no damage or no harm to anyone. But this has prompted the Councillor Moore to ask the town, and the town did bring out new recommendations, or not new recommendations, but information for the community. When something like this hits close to home, of course, you want to do something to make sure people understand how important it is that children are aware of their surroundings, and they're now doing some promotion of stranger danger. Making sure kids understand who they should be trusting, who they should not be trusting, and to keep their wits about them. There's a list of recommendations. It's going to be published, I think, on the town's website maybe this week. And it's unfortunate that we live in a society where some of these things have to happen, and, you know, children, it's the innocence we have when we look back on our lives as children, and we lament that maybe it's not as innocent anymore.
It's a dramatically different society, different world in which we live today.
Indeed it is. And of course, you know, when you talk about children in stranger danger and that kind of education, it's also a concern because you want to approach it in a way that is sensitive and doesn't make children overly anxious and afraid of their own, you know, trusted members in their family. So it's a thing that we have to walk lightly on. Now, the last thing I would like to talk about from last night's council meeting is something that wasn't on the agenda, which showed up at the last minute, and I don't know if you've spoken with anybody else about this morning, but the province has completed its review of police services in Nova Scotia. And the town of Oxford received a letter from the Attorney General, Becky Druin, letting them know that the review has been done. This, of course, followed the mass casualty incident, this tragedy at Fort-de-Peak. Well, let's just say we're still digesting the material that was presented in that letter and in the published report. And we're not quite sure how things are going to shake out in the coming years, but essentially, the province's plan is that the RCMP will continue to provide policing services with some adjustments to how they do that and how they operate with other municipalities and their police services. But where this is going to all end up and how much it's going to cost us, that's a question for later this summer.
Well, I took part in the lockup. As you know, they have what they call a technical briefing quite often when they make announcements on complex topics. And I got into the lockup yesterday and listened into all the vivid detail of the what, the why, and the how. And a lot of it is going to follow a great deal of intermunicipal discussion. The province is going to talk to each individual municipality, including the town of Oxford, and talk about their policing situation and the costs. One of the things they recognized was that there are some municipal units in Nova Scotia that get better policing, if you will, than some others. And they were saying that some small municipal units like Oxford would maybe make decisions about how many police officers to have based on what they could afford rather than what they need. And one of the things that the province is committing to is to ensuring that all of the municipalities have equal services, which would mean, in my view at least, my takeaway was enhanced for Oxford, better services than we currently have, and that the province is going to have to pick up. Now, they had no estimates of how much it would cost, and I asked the question, are you ready for this? This is going to cost big. And the minister simply said, we are committed to providing fair and equal services across the province. So I think we can take some good news from that. There might be people in other places, and I think of all the other media guys in Halifax who started asking, does this mean more for Halifax to pay? And of course, they're looking at their own turf when they say that and ask those questions. But the answer might be yes, and it's not a bad thing if you're going to have a semblance of equality across the province.
And of course, Oxford has been dealing with this for almost a decade in terms of their review of their police services and how much it's costing the town on a per capita basis, which is, I think, more than any other municipality in the province. So this may well shake out that Oxford ends up in a better position. Of the 6 recommendations that are being proposed, it's interesting that they're talking about community safety officers and special constables. Perhaps that will lead to more visible policing presence on the community streets, which is something that a lot of folks have been asking for. I guess we're going to have to wait and see just how all this shakes out. As you say, the negotiations will be coming up.
Well, the minister did say that this is a pivotal point in Nova Scotia history in terms of policing. And there's no question, this is big, big, big. There'll be all kinds of public meetings and all kinds of activity, all kinds of discussions, no doubt disagreements. And it's just going to be one of those things that rocks the boat for the next probably 5 to 10 years before it can really level off. But I think it's recognition from the province that, you can't expect the towns and villages and so on to pay the bill for such an important thing. And if we're going to be fair and call ourselves a province, it has to be consistent across the province. That means somebody else has to pay to make sure that we've got consistent services. And for towns like Oxford, that I think is a good thing. The other good thing, too, is that their review recognized the same kind of concerns that were expressed in the review that was done by Cumberland Municipality prior to the province doing the same thing. And that was they want more visibility, more police. They want them there quicker when they're called. They want kind of a throwback to the old days where they lived in the town, they worked in the town, and took part in the town activities, were part of the fabric of the community. That's the perception the province got as well. So seems like we're all on the same page. It's just how to do it and who's going to pay for it is yet to be answered.
Yes. One aspect that stood out for me, though, on that particular point, when Cumberland did their review of RCMP services and policing services, etc., it led them to open up to proposals for alternative police services that may not have been RCMP. They ended up sticking with the RCMP, but their own review did lead them to open the doors to a possible other policing services option. And in terms of this report, it's interesting that the consultant that was brought in to manage this review, Deloitte, their proposal was, or their recommendation was, that the province move to a provincial-wide policing services system, and the Department of Justice decided to instead go with a strengthened and modified RCMP model. And I know we only have 3 minutes, but that's a really large topic to get into at another point.
It is, but I read that differently. The province isn't enhancing the RCMP. They are calling upon the RCMP to become that police, the Nova Scotia Police, province-wide. And they're setting the standards. So the standards have been set by the RCMP in a town-by-town basis over the last number of years. And the province is now setting the standards and setting the benchmarks, setting the requirements, and all the rest of it. If they had to replace the RCMP, we're talking about buildings and cars and equipment and personnel, it would have been, I think, cost prohibitive for the province to consider. But it could very well be that, that could happen in the future. I mean, the Quebec has the Sûreté. We have the famous OPP in Ontario Provincial Police, and so on. Whether you call them RCMP or OPP or whatever you are, they're under the jurisdiction of the province now. That's a little bit different.
I guess we can say that the folks who are going to be dealing with this will not be having much of a summer break.
Yes, that's right.
Now, look, Bill, just quickly, because we're running out of time here, I want to make sure we get a couple of things in. In terms of our Oxford community, of course, graduation in Oxford, Oxford Regional Education Center, grade 12 graduation happening tonight in Oxford over the famous Salt Lake, home of the former sinkhole. Local businessman and a distant cousin, I should say, Merville Rushton, will be doing some fireworks in recognition of the grads tonight. He sent a notice out yesterday so that folks with farm animals and other pets who are sensitive may have time to take measures to protect them. But that's going to be happening tonight. And, of course, we've got the big Canada Day celebrations coming up on Tuesday. And in Oxford, one of those new changes for this year is the Capitol Theatre is open and showing movies. Can you believe it? In Oxford.
I love it.
So on Tuesday, folks are going to be able to see Jim Carrey in The Mask, or one of my personal favorites later that night, Austin Powers, International Man of Mystery. And there's a great craft market happening at the Trinity United Church on Tuesday morning, 8:30 till noon, that folks should take advantage of here in Oxford.